The next area that we're going to go over is defenses to crimes. Again, defenses to crimes. There are three main categories of defenses to crimes. Those three main categories of defenses are, number one, justification, number two, excuse, and number three, mitigation. Again, the three main categories of defenses to crimes are justification, excuse, and mitigation. So let's go over justification first. Justification, the general rule for justification is the defendant will not be held liable for conduct that is justified. A justified action is permitted for protective reasons. Once again, the rule for justification is a defendant will not be held liable for conduct that is justified. A justified action is permitted for protective reasons. There are five main types of justification. Let me go over those for you. Number one is necessity. Number two, self-defense. Number three, defense of others. Number four, prevention of crime. And number five, defense of property. I'll say those once again. Number one, necessity. Two, self-defense. Three, defense of others. 4, prevention of crime. 5, defense of property. Now let's go right into necessity. Necessity. The rule of law for necessity is a defendant may assert a defense of necessity when there would be a greater harm. So I'm going to give you an example. A, B, and C are rock climbing, and there's a horrific accident. A, B, and C are dangling from a rope. A and B are on the top, and the only way for A and B to be saved is for B to cut C off and let him go, because the rope just cannot hold that weight. Out of necessity to save the two above, would B be justified in cutting the rope and basically killing C? The answer to the question would be yes, because he had to kill one to save two. Once again, his defense would be he had to kill one, he had to cut the rope to save two. Therefore, that is the defense of necessity. The next one is self-defense. The rule of law is one is justified in using the amount of force which is reasonably necessary to prevent an attack. Again, self-defense, one is justified in using the amount of force that is reasonably necessary to prevent an attack. Deadly force under self-defense is only justified when there's a threat of serious bodily injury or death. Once again, you're only justified in using deadly force under self-defense when you are being threatened with serious bodily injury or death. There's a split between the common law and the modern law, and I want to go over that with you. Under the common law, which is the minority, required that the person try to attempt to retreat if they were able to before they used deadly force. Again, the common law, which is the minority, required an attempt to retreat, if able, before there was use of deadly force. The model penal code and the majority, and what you want to use on the MBE, is there's no need to retreat before using deadly force if there's a reasonable risk of death or serious injury which is imminent. Again, under the model penal code, which is also the majority, and what you would want to use on the MBE portion of the bar exam, there's no need to retreat if there is a reasonable risk of death or injury is imminent. Number 3, defense of others. The rule is one is justified to kill if another is in peril of death or injury. So basically, you're just coming to the rescue of another. It's the same basic rule for self-defense. You're justified in using the amount of force that is reasonable under the particular circumstances. So you would want to use the reasonable man standard, reasonable person standard. So there's a majority and a minority split here. I'm going to discuss that with you. The minority says that you step into the shoes of the person who you're defending. So let's say, for example, you come up into an alley and you see a guy holding a gun on another guy and you think he's being robbed, and you go and you attack the guy with the gun, later to find out that that is a police officer arresting somebody. He's not mugging someone, he's actually a police officer that is arresting somebody. You just went and defended somebody who was being arrested, you attacked the police officer. The minority rule says you step into the shoes of the person person you are defending. Therefore, in that particular circumstances, you would not be justified in going after the police officer. However, the majority and the MBE says that you are allowed a reasonable mistake. Again, for defense of others, you are allowed a reasonable mistake. Moving forward, number 4 under justification is prevention of a crime. And we have a split here. Under prevention of a crime, under common law, one was justified in using deadly force to stop the commission of a felony. Once again, under common law, one was justified to use deadly force to stop the commission of a felony. However, under the Model Penal Code, which is also the majority and what I want you to use on the MBE, the rule of law limits deadly force to imminent public danger, and only the police, not an ordinary citizen, may use deadly force to prevent a crime. Once again, under the Model Penal Code, the majority and the MBE, it limits deadly force to an imminent, meaning immediate, public danger, and only the police, not an ordinary citizen, can use deadly force to prevent a crime. So that is crime prevention. Number 5 is defense of property. The general rule to defense of property is you may never use deadly force to defend property of your own, property of another. Again, the defense of property general rule is no deadly force is allowed or justified to protect property. We do have one exception. That exception is when you are in your own home. You can protect yourself in your own home by using deadly force. Once again, the general rule for defense of property is deadly force is not justified to protect your property. The one exception is when you are in your own home and you want to look for a burglary. So that's the one time that you can use deadly force for defense of property. So once again, I'm going to just go over those quick 5 justifications to criminal conduct. The rule of law is the defendant will not be held liable for conduct that is justified for protective reasons. And the 5 justifications are necessity, self-defense, defense of others, prevention of crime, and defense of property. Moving on, the next category of defenses to crimes is excuses. So excuses to criminal conduct. There's basically 8 types of excuses to criminal conduct. Those 8 types are 1, insanity, 2, diminished capacity, 3, infancy, 4, intoxication, 5, mistake, 6, duress, 7, consent, and 8, entrapment. Once again, insanity, diminished capacity, infancy, intoxication, mistake, duress, consent, and entrapment. Now let's talk about the first one. The first one, under excuses to criminal conduct, insanity, there are basically 4 theories of insanity. The 4 main theories of insanity that you're going to learn are, number 1 is called the Mitigation rule. Again, Mitigation rule. That is what's called the right or wrong test. Number 2, under the Model Penal Code, it's called the substantial capacity test. So the Model Penal Code rule is called the substantial capacity test. Number 3 is the irresistible impulse, basically the inability to control themselves. Again, irresistible impulse, which is the inability to control oneself. And the last one, number 4, is the Durham rule. Let's go into those and discuss them each individually. The Mitigation rule, which is the common law rule. It's also the majority and what you want to follow on the MBE portion of the bar exam. It's also known again as the right or wrong test. The rule states at the time of the crime, defendant had a mental disease so that he did not understand the nature or quality of the act or did not know the act was wrong.